President Hatta, trustees, counselors, distinguished faculty and students. Allow me to extend my heartfelt congratulations to you, the graduating class of 2010. I would like to thank the National Graduate School for Policy Studies for giving me the opportunity to speak to you on this important day. It seems not that long ago that I stood where you stand today, facing a future full of hope and promise, eager to take on the challenges of public policy. Here in Japan, my home country, across the Asia and Pacific region, and indeed around the world, it is remarkably evident how much the future is shaped by the policy choices we make today. Asia, for example, has gone from being one of the poorest regions in the world to one of its most dynamic in less than a generation. Poverty has decreased at an astonishing rate, and a healthy middle class has begun to emerge. Yet we know the significant challenges remain. You will soon be returning to your home countries and institutions around Asia, in Africa, and other regions with the insight you have gained over the past year or two here in Tokyo. As you develop expertise in your field, you will be counted on to contribute your best efforts to the continued social and economic progress of society. It is a weighty responsibility, but with passion, dedication, and judgment, each and every one of you has the opportunity to bring positive, lasting change. Today, I will focus my remarks on the economic policy challenges common to all emerging countries. Specifically, I will look at three areas where we at the ADB believe are critical policy issues: economic imbalances, poverty and inequality, and the environment-development nexus. Growth is good. There is no doubt about that. And ensuring strong economic growth is clearly an important policy issue. Societies need to expand the production of goods and services and increase productivity to thrive. Government must therefore carefully design policies to provide incentives, not disincentives, to the private sector. They need to support productive sectors through the provision of infrastructure, education, skill training, health services, and other public goods. To help companies improve the quality of the goods, raise productivity, and capture markets, policy should spur research and development, innovation, and the adaptation and adoption and adaptation of new technologies. These challenges are as relevant for software developers in India and car makers in the People's Republic of China as they are for farmers in Indonesia. Yet, increasingly, we are also concerned about the quality of growth. The Asian Development Bank, for example, no longer talks about growth alone, but rather we qualify it to put it into the context of the challenges facing economies in the Asia and Pacific region. We therefore seek to foster more balanced, inclusive, and environmentally sustainable growth. Let me address each in turn, beginning with more balanced growth. The US-led slowdown of the global economy highlighted the problem of economic imbalances. The rapid growth of developing Asia's exports, especially since the financial crisis of 1997-98, led to a huge buildup of foreign exchange reserves and the export of capital to other regions, particularly the US. The flow of funds from Asia and other regions in turn helped the US to sustain a massive and growing current account deficit. Combined with risky lending and creative financial products, it also fueled the subprime mortgage crisis. Now, a rebalancing of global capital flows between surplus and deficit countries is needed for a more stable world growth. To be clear, Asia's export-led growth model has generated substantial benefits and will continue to do so. But the crisis highlighted the region's vulnerability to demand shocks, in this case, emanating from the slowdown in the West. Asia needs to rebalance by diversifying its export destination, especially through the promotion of intra-regional trade. It also needs to rebalance by generating more domestic demand through higher consumption. Asia has proven its capacity to produce. Now, it must show that it can also consume. In addition, some countries need to consider a better balance between economic sectors. Manufacturing has performed well, but overinvestment in key areas has resulted in falling productivity, while high capital intensity limits job creation. Because many services are non-tradable and purchased by households, a rebalancing towards services goes hand in hand with the shift to domestic consumption. Some countries have performed well in services, including export-oriented services such as business and knowledge process outsourcing, where India and the Philippines have led the way, but others have not. Inclusive growth is the second of the policy issues I wish to discuss. By inclusive, we mean that people from all parts of our societies can participate in and benefit from the growth process. When we look at who is included or excluded, we use a variety of measures, including poverty and inequality. In the developing countries of the Asia and Pacific region, growth over the past 2 decades has been remarkable. Per capita GDP rose almost threefold between 1990 and 2008, or 5.7% a year on average. This helped bring down the poverty level by a sizable 25 percentage points during 1990 to 2005. Poverty measured at $2 or less a day in PPP terms. Yet, a great many people in this region remain poor. Asia and the Pacific is home to 60% of the total population of the world, but 72% of its poor. That is 1.8 billion people. As a policy challenge, reducing this figure will keep policymakers engaged for some time. There are also non-income measures of poverty, sometimes referred to as non-income poverty. For example, while income poverty has fallen considerably, hunger has not fallen so much, or has fallen only marginally. This is because the incomes of those who are hungry are far below poverty lines. Hunger inflicts misery on those who suffer from it and hampers the economic growth of the next generation. 27% of children under the age of 5 in sub-Saharan Africa are underweight. In South Asia, the figure is a staggering 45%. Half of Asia lives without basic sanitation, and 900 million people are without access to electricity. In addition to poverty, rising inequality in both its income and non-income dimensions is an emerging concern for the Asian growth story. One ADB study found that a large number of developing Asian economies, actually 14 out of 20 examined, saw Gini coefficients, a measure of inequality, increasing in recent years. Inequality in access to basic social services such as education and health also persists, exacerbated by income inequality. Let me now turn to the important environmental challenges that we face today and that have been associated with economic growth and development. How we live, how we produce, and how our economies grow have implications for our physical environment. Our actions can pollute the environment, alter our climate, and in the extreme even threaten our very existence. Today, as we all know, the sustainability of growth is a key policy issue. Climate change is of particular concern. Greater climatic volatility and the worrisome rise in global sea levels threaten coastal and lowland areas and the survival of small low-lying island states. Climate change is believed to be largely the result of greenhouse gas emissions, and if no action is taken, it is likely to intensify in the coming decades. Under a high emissions scenario, average global temperature could rise 4 degrees Celsius by the end of this century from the levels at the end of the last. The economic and social implications of climate change could be very serious. A recent ADB study focusing on Southeast Asian countries estimates that if nothing is done, the total cost of climate change for Indonesia, the Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam could reach as high as 6.7% of their combined GDP each year by 2100. Climate change could hurt poor countries and people most, and could seriously hinder growth and poverty reduction in this and other regions. Sustainability cannot be achieved unless the world moves into a low-carbon, climate-resilient development path. Sustainability is also a global issue in that the effects of environmental degradation respect no borders. Greenhouse gases emitted in one country affect the climate of others, and efforts to reduce them are a global public good requiring global cooperation. The Asian Development Bank is tackling those challenges under a vision of an Asia-Pacific free of poverty. To promote this vision, our recently formulated long-term strategic framework called Strategy 2020 focuses on 3 core agendas: inclusive economic growth, environmentally sustainable growth, and regional cooperation and integration. Inclusive growth, as we see it, first requires high, sustained, and broad-based economic growth to create enough productive employment and expand economic opportunity. Second, it requires a broad framework of social inclusion to allow everyone to participate equally in those new economic opportunities.